There's something about hotels that feels off. Maybe it's the fact that hundreds of strangers pass through the same rooms, or how the halls go quiet after a certain hour, like the building itself is holding its breath. But if you ask the people who actually work there, they'll tell you something else entirely. Because sometimes what happens inside those rooms was never meant to be seen. These are 3 true hotel worker horror stories that'll make you think twice before checking in. I worked the front desk at a mid-range hotel just off the highway. It wasn't a great hotel, but we stayed busy, especially with people just passing through for the night. Truckers, families, and the occasional business traveler. But one night, around 1:30 a.m., a guy came down from the 3rd floor. He looked irritated, but not angry, just confused. He said, "Hey, I think you gave me a room that's already occupied." That does happen sometimes. Double bookings, system glitches, etc. It's rare, but not impossible. So I apologized and pulled up his reservation. I confirmed the room number, room 307. I told him I'd move him immediately. But before I could finish, he added something that made me pause. He said the lights were off when I walked in, but I heard someone breathing. That definitely wasn't normal. I asked if he actually saw anyone. He shook his head and said he didn't stick around long enough to check. Just grabbed his bag and left. At that point, I assumed maybe someone had broken in, or maybe housekeeping forgot to clear the room properly. I grabbed the master key and headed upstairs. The hallway was dead quiet. No TVs, no footsteps, no sound. When I got to 307, the door was slightly open, just enough to make my stomach drop. I pushed it open slowly and called out, "Front desk." No response. The room was completely dark, except for the faint light from the hallway behind me. I reached in and flipped the switch. The room was empty, bed perfectly made, towels folded, no luggage, no signs anyone had been there. But there was one thing. The bathroom door was closed, and I swear, I heard something move inside. I just stood there for a second, trying to convince myself it was pipes, or air pressure, or anything else. Then I knocked. Again, no response. So I opened the bathroom door, and it was empty. At that point, I felt stupid for even being nervous. I laughed it off, checked the rest of the room, and went back downstairs. I reassigned the guest to a different room, and that should have been the end of it. But about 20 minutes later, the phone rang. It was room 307. I just stared at the screen for a second, because that room was supposed to be empty. I picked up and said, "Front desk." And for a few seconds, there was nothing, just silence. Then I heard it. Slow, steady breathing, right into the receiver. I hung up immediately. And the worst part was when I checked the system again. Room 307 wasn't listed as vacant anymore. I worked housekeeping at a hotel near the Strip. We had a system. Every room gets cleaned, checked, and marked as ready before the next guest comes in. No exceptions. One afternoon, I was assigned a room on the 5th floor that had just been marked as ready, which meant it was already cleaned. But when I got there, my supervisor told me to do a quick double check. Said there had been complaints about missed details lately. So I knocked. Housekeeping. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. So I used my key and went in. And immediately, something felt off. The room looked clean at first glance. Bed made, trash gone, everything in place. But the air felt heavy, like someone had just been in there. I don't know how to explain it, but when you clean rooms every day, you can tell the difference between a fresh room and one that's just been reset. I started checking the usual spots. Bathroom clean, closet empty. Then I noticed the bed. The sheets were tucked in, but not tightly, like someone had been sitting on it after it was made. That's when I heard it, a soft sound behind me. I turned around, and the bathroom door was slowly closing. I know I left it open. I walked over and pushed it open again, still empty. At that point, I was starting to feel really uneasy, so I decided to just finish quickly and get out. But as I was grabbing my cart, I heard something else, a whisper right behind me. Not loud, not clear, just there. I spun around, expecting to see someone, but there was nothing. I left immediately. I told my supervisor that something wasn't right with that room. She looked annoyed more than anything. She said, "That room hasn't been cleaned yet." I told her it had to have been. It looked perfect. But she shook her head. No one's been in there since the last guest checked out this morning. Then she checked the log and went quiet because the system showed the room had been marked as ready over an hour earlier by someone who wasn't even on shift that day. I worked night audit at a smaller hotel. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and most nights were dead. Just me, the cameras, and the occasional late check-in. There was one guest who stayed longer than most, an older man in his 60s, quiet and kept to himself. He checked in for 2 nights and ended up staying for over a week. He paid in cash and always extended his stay 1 day at a time. Nothing too unusual about that, except I never saw him leave his room. Not once. No trips outside, and no housekeeping requests. At first, I figured he just didn't want to be bothered. But after a few days, it started to feel strange. So one night, around 3 a.m., I checked the cameras. His door hadn't opened in over 48 hours. That's when I decided to do a wellness check. I went up to his room and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. So I used my key and opened the door, and the smell hit me immediately. Not strong, just wrong. The room was dark. I stepped inside and called out. No response. Then I saw the bed, still made, completely untouched. The bathroom empty, closet empty. There was no one there, but his belongings were still in the room. Wallet, clothes, shoes, everything. It was like he had just disappeared. I reported it to my manager, and they contacted the police. They came, checked everything, and eventually cleared the room. Said maybe he left without checking out. But that didn't make sense, because the next night, he showed up at the front desk. Same clothes, same calm expression, and said he wanted to extend his stay. Like nothing had happened. I didn't even know what to say. I just nodded and processed the payment. But before he walked away, he looked at me and said, "You shouldn't go into occupied rooms." I never told him that I had. And after that night, I never saw him on the cameras again. But his room key, it kept getting used. Hotels are supposed to be places you pass through. Temporary, safe, and forgettable. But sometimes, the things that happen inside those rooms don't check out when you do. And maybe the next time you hear something in the middle of the night, it's not just the building settling. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe to True Terra. Until next time, stay safe out there